Sourcebook training tutorial. This session is on Lo Tignov, do not steal. And we'll be exploring the core value of priceless possessions. My goal is to help you get ready to run your own session. I'm not going to go through everything in the source book, so please either read through it before this or after this. What I do hope to do is help you understand the structure and intent of each section of the source book, add some background information and insights that are not in the book, and make suggestions on how to enhance your session and discussions. Please note, there is a lot of material here. There really is a ton of material, and even if you have an hour or even an hour and a half, you're not going to get through it all. So either as a teacher facilitator, you should decide before which sections you want to do, or at least be aware of them in order to give your group the choice as you go through it. Okay, let's get started with the overview. So the first thing we do over here on page 2 is an introduction dealing with the sense of personal violation involved with theft. The next section, we go into Peshat, the literal meaning, and the 3 elements of theft: property theft, goodwill, and body. We start off on the bottom here with kinds of property theft, things of value. The next section is intellectual property and how that is recognized as theft. Then public property. And the last thing is borrowing something without asking is also considered a type of theft with its conversations here. Then the next section is Geneva Dat, or what's called goodwill, stealing someone's goodwill. Fascinating. On page 7, we go into kidnapping. Kidnapping is theft of the body. After that, we go into the Yesod underlying principle here, and that is that it's really that there's a right, there's a God-given right to possess, which allows us to possess. And that is what's violated when someone steals from us, sense of personal violation. And the next section is, the last section is appreciation of our own possessions. Okay, let's get into the detail here. So as an opening exercise, I don't think you need anything besides what's here. Read through this article, and it deals with that sense of personal violation, and ask, has anything ever been stolen from you? How did it make you feel? More than just the theft of property, something else has been taken from you. What is that? What is that personal violation? Okay, when we get into the Peshat, the literal understanding here, you'll note that first the definition. Stealing by definition means taking something without having permission or right that someone else owns or has the right to use. There are many different categories of this. Actually, look in the supplemental materials in terms of American law, what is there. The Seforno, he says from a halachic, from a Torah perspective, Lo Tignov, do not steal. He says, Lo Tignov Bechlal Geneva, included in theft is Genevet Nefashot, which means kidnapping, theft of people. Genevet Mammon, which means theft of money and valuables, things of monetary value. Ugenevet Dat Tabriot, and the theft of what's called in Hebrew Dat, or knowledge, or as we're going to explain, goodwill. And then says this Sforna, Afal Pi, She'ika Azara al Genevet Nafash. Even though the main intent over here is kidnapping, Davar Lamed Minyono, something which is contextual. And what does he mean? He means that if you look at the 10 Commandments, number 6 is do not murder, number 7, do not commit adultery. Those are capital crimes. So what theft are we talking about here? That's also a capital crime. That's kidnapping. And that's what he means. So that's why it's the main intent. Okay, then we get into the different categories. We're going to first do property theft, things of value, things that we own that have value. Now, note that it's not just objects of value, but also intellectual property, public property, and borrowing without permission. And we're going to explain each one as we go here. So here on page 4, we start with intellectual property. And it's interesting. This is it's a very new and delicate issue that's discussed in halacha, but it seems to be that what you create, someone, right? It's one who creates something new in the world is the owner. And even if it's just an idea, since you created it, it's novel, you own it. The next, over here in the middle of page 4, is public property. That's something which over here, the Tosefta in Baba Kama. Tosefta is it's a part of the Talmud which was not included in the Mishnah, but it's often used in the Talmudic discussion. So this is this was not used in a Talmudic discussion, but it's at the back of the book of the Talmud. All the Tosefta is printed, and it says stealing from the public is worse than stealing from an individual, because you don't know who to give it back to. And there are two types of public theft. Either it's stealing from something which is owned by the public, the good old disabled parking spot, or it's stealing from many people. Let's say that you're a shopkeeper with dishonest scales. Well, at the end of the day, you had 1,000 people coming in and out your store. Who did you steal from? How do you pay back? So that money should be used for communal needs. Okay. Then on the next page, at the top of page 5, we have borrowing without asking. That's a very also interesting, right, and somewhat not known. One says Rava, one in the first source over here, one who borrows without permission is a thief. Shoel shalom midat l'rabanan gazlin have. Someone that borrows without asking is a thief. And obviously the reasoning behind that is that the use of an object is part of what is owned. So apply the definition, taking something which belongs to someone else without permission is theft. Love this first question. How has technology today changed our sense of personal property? Our information, our habits, right? We've given those to Google and Facebook. That's why they're two of the biggest companies in the world today. Are we starting to realize that that's actually worth a lot? And that belongs to us. That's our property. We gave it to them willingly. Yes, when you get an account, you sign up for one. Okay. Moving on. Over here, we go to the next session, which is the most interesting of theft, is Genevat Dat. And that means goodwill. And that it's interesting. Do not confuse it with intellectual property. Intellectual property is an idea that's worth money. Over here, it means giving something. Deception, here we go. Deception through which you receive unearned goodwill is theft. So you do something for someone and you deceive them in a way that they either respect you or will be grateful to you, or they might respect you more than you deserve. That is considered theft. Fascinating. The questions over here are great. Here on page 6 is, do you think that browsing in a store to see an item and then buying it online is stealing? Well, did you get the attention of the shopkeeper? If it's known that this is what people do, then it's no longer theft. Regifting. My grandmother had a do-for cupboard. She used to have all these gifts that people gave her, and she put them in a cupboard, and she would say, this would do for that one, and this will do for her and him. So would you have done it in any case, right? If you would have done it in any case, that's not stealing someone's in goodwill, respect, or gratitude. The next section over here on page 7 is kidnapping, and this is the third category that the Sforno mentioned. And it's at first glance, why is kidnapping theft? If theft is taking something from another, what is being stolen? When someone is kidnapping, they themselves are being taken. So obviously what's being taken is the ability to move around freely and to be secure from assault, be it violent or sexual. And that the second question over here, according to this understanding, sexual abuse is theft. Framing it in this way, does it inform the conversation? Excellent conversation to have. The next section on page 8 then goes into the underlying principle, which actually, once you do this, that last question really becomes very interesting. And what's amazing to note is that the Talmud, over 1,000 years old, says anyone who steals from his friend, even a coin of the smallest value, a peruta, kol hagozel et chaveru shava pruta ki'ilu noitel nishmato. Someone that steals from his friend, even a coin of the smallest value, it is as if he has taken away his life. He's taken away his life. And that gets down to the fact that at the end of the day, this God-given right to possess is something which comes with what's called our Tselem Elokim. That comes with our divine image. And that's the violation. That's the violation, that when someone steals, not only are they taking away the object or the possession, they are infringing on the right to possess, which is something uniquely human and in fact godly. So great discussion over here and a really deep insight. Okay, the next section is now that we've discussed other people's property, how do we relate to our own property? Appreciation for what we have. And there's a well-known part of the Talmud that says that Yaakov, when Jacob was crossing the river, and he went back to get something. And that's when the angel fought with him. And the Talmud says, what did he go back for? He went back for pachim katanim. He went back for these small vessels. And the Talmud points out that you see from here, the righteous are very, their possessions are very dear to them, to the righteous, because they do not steal, and they realize that everything is a gift from God. And that, of course, leads into this source that we brought over here from Brachot, that is beautiful. The earth is the Lord's, and then the other verse says, no, the earth belongs to people. How does this contradiction, how does it pan out? Because before a blessing and after blessing, just reciting that blessing is paying or giving God that recognition about what you have. And then thinking about one's property that way is fascinating. Integration, of course. And I once asked, I was teaching some teenagers, and I asked them to draw, what picture would you draw to try and capture this as a core value? And one of the girls said, everything just in its place, and a little string connecting it to its owner. And how clear the world would be that. It's amazing how many of our interactions do deal with this issue of possession. And of course, this core value coming to teach us to be so careful with it. The next sections are everyday, supplemental materials, additional information. I already mentioned the different types, categories of theft. And then this over here is just startling. The National Association of Shoplifting, how much shoplifting really happens. It's really incredible. It's really terrible. And then we finish off with who's who in the text, and of course this personal reflection, which is such a beautiful comment from the Kotzker Rebbe, and that is, do not steal money, do not steal people's impressions and opinions, do not steal your own impressions and opinions. Often a person promises himself to do great things and doesn't do them. Have you not then